Even the only 10 minutes that I was there, I literally had a group of 5 guys try to come get me to take as many bong rips as I could, forcefully without my boyfriend present.
There was a lot of guys that did approach us.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. There's very little news to go on 9 days into 16-year-old Kiely Rodni's disappearance. There's a tremendous hunger for knowledge and certainty amidst the anxiety, and it's within this schema that you'll start to see people trying to plug those holes with easy answers. Some of the speculation I've seen is that Kiely was never at the party to begin with, and that's why no one can find her or her car. Now, that sort of speculation comes from massive ignorance about the timeline, ignorance about which witnesses were there and what they said, and obviously ignorance regarding Kiely's own phone and where it was when it last pinged just after 12:30.
Yeah, the ping for the data points and everything were near the water. It's hard to tell an exact pinpoint or anything like that, but just as much on land as it was on water.
What's also, I think, a somewhat ominous development is that the search is now been changed, altered to some extent, where they're not necessarily searching for Kiely, they're not necessarily searching for a person or even a vehicle. They're trying to search for any evidence. So small items, a piece of paper, a shoelace, an item of clothing, hair, anything like that. And that is that's quite a worrying development in itself.
The area has been walked, driven, flown, grid searched. They're getting into tighter grid searching to, at this point we're looking for small and anything evidence-wise, as opposed to cars, people, things of that nature, even phones. We're trying to make it even tighter. We had swimmers we announced the other day that actually did surface swimming, so we don't want to disturb the water even underneath, because that can cause its own problems. And divers have been deployed at this point as well to assist in the search, and it's been pretty thorough overall. But yeah, we continue to look for that item as well. Just because it was last pinged there, that doesn't mean that that's where the phone stopped being. There's lots of reasons of why those notifications or data points could be lost.
So moving somewhat laterally away from the search per se, I've noticed there are a few YouTubers who are helpfully emphasizing or indirectly accusing Kiely's friends, or let's put it this way, I think they are being very helpful. Sammy Smith was an early target, but now her boyfriend seems to be a lightning rod for suspicion as well. And so you kind of have people saying, why on earth is he doing a parallel investigation or whatever? But he's a young kid and he's trying to do what he's trying to do in his own way. So what is he supposed to do? Nothing. And if he does nothing, well, then he's also guilty. So anyway, these same creators then wonder why people aren't coming forward with tips, footage, and photos. I'll tell you why. If innocent people are going to be accused and judged guilty in the courts of social media, and we've seen just how devastating and capricious social media can be when it wants to be. We've had fair warning of exactly what takes place when social media turns against you. Then you can see why teenagers, especially those who were engaging in questionable revelries, would see the most sensible route as saying nothing. I mean, can you really blame them, given what we've seen? In a case like this, where there is so little information, what you want to do for as long as possible is gather information and keep an open mind. This is known as the scout mindset. And so it's actually a sign of intelligence the longer you can delay making up your mind, forming an opinion, by gathering the information, and let the information lead you one way or the other. Do not be led by your opinion, where the information then supports the opinion you've already made. Allow reality to be formed through all of the evidence. That's the scientific way that you approach this. So one thing I've been able to find out with a little digging is that Jagger Westfall, Kiely's ex, describes himself as a photographer. Now, I've been in that position myself, where I've taken photos for a young woman, for their social media. This was a lot in the early days of Facebook. And so you can kind of almost think of Jagger as a sort of a player, as someone who'd be quite cool, someone who helps young girls, I guess, get their social media up and running, with some good photography. And you can see he's got quite a few followers, 934. But it's quite interesting, the photos that Jagger took of Kiely in an abandoned building. And sometimes that is what happens. Photographers and their models fall in love with one another. I don't know whether that happened here. We still don't know the circumstances of how these two met up, but it would be interesting to know that. But when you look at Kiely in these photos that Jagger took, you kind of get the idea of her, appearing quite grown up. That's quite a elegant dress that she's wearing. Now, I don't know whether Sammy took these photos and gave them to Jagger, or whether Jagger took these photos, but they appear to have been on Jagger's TikTok. So it's easy to make that assumption. Now, there's also a wonderful, charming clip of Kiely playing the mandolin and singing a ditty beside her grandpa, a guy called David Robertson, on stand-up bass. Now, you might think, what is the point of looking at this? Well, we're trying to get to know Kiely as a person. Is she confident? Is she uncertain? Is she someone who's very shy? And so this clip kind of presents a different sense of Kiely than we get simply by looking at photos. So you get a sense of Kiely as an attractive, confident, and also precocious teenager. The photos Jagger, I think, has taken also present her as a precocious young woman, and that wasn't just hypothetical. She was about to head to college, a straight A student at only 16. So the precocious vibe is really part and parcel of the portrait here. And you can imagine if she's precocious and she's kind of in the company of older men, she may have a little bit of a different attitude to that than someone else. She may want to test her skills as a young adult. She perhaps wants, because she's got to go into that environment. And that might be totally different from another young woman who is not about to take that step, if that makes sense. So in the space where we are lacking in leads, clues, and breakthroughs, we can try to get to know Kiely better by talking and listening to her family and friends instead of judging them. We can try and explore and kind of get a sense, looking at what is out there, looking at what has been said, listening, taking notes, getting and gathering information. And so that's the one side. We can also try to get to know the terrain better, which, as crime scenes go, is fairly complicated. It's certainly not straightforward, which is why the search is taking so long in a way as well. There are hundreds of searches and they haven't found very much. So just be aware in the situation where there's a sort of information drought, that some people are going to come forward with quick and easy answers. Well, just be careful and think critically about these, easy answers. True crime reminds us that reality is quite different. Reality is often inscrutable and subtle, rather than clear, easy, and obvious. Truth tends to be a lot harder, takes more effort, and takes longer to dig out, which is why you'll see conspiracy artists try to make hay in this doldrum period where we don't know anything. They'll put up their hands and say, I know, it's quite simple what happened. So this is the second case we're dealing with, where a young blonde woman, a sort of America's daughter, goes missing in the gorgeous outdoors in the midst of what ought to be a time of innocent celebration, of young people being happy together. And we are left panning through the landscape, probing the texture of trees, grasses, and stretches of water for answers. Sometimes if we look for long enough and hard enough, we do find what we're looking for. but there are no guarantees. Summer Wells and Suzanne Morphew are cases that still haunt us. Because despite our certainties in those cases, reality remains frustratingly out of reach even now. We can only hope those who have the answers feel their hearts softening over time rather than hardening. But that will to some extent depend on us and how we cover this case and how we are able to keep an open mind. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, like, share, leave a comment. And if you're really enjoying the content, you can also hit the thanks button. And I'll see you guys next time.